You know those stories that eventually see the hero fall from grace and take a dark path? Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader, Walter White into Heisenberg, Harvey Dent into Two-Face. There's always a certain moment in which you can feel the nexus point happening. That moment is where you think, damn, this is probably the point of no return if someone doesn't stop them here. Well, that's where Chihiro stands right now. So, let's talk about it.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
First things first, Hokuzono is absolutely cooking up a delicious meal for us. Not one, not two, but three colour spreads for us to feast our eyes upon here. And easily, for me, a solid 10 out of 10 chapter. Now, a 10 out of 10 isn't something that I give lightly. Hell, even JJK overall didn't get a 10 out of 10 from me, and the only other two series that I've ever given 10s to were Hunter x Hunter and Vagabond in terms of manga. But this chapter was a 10 out of 10. Something I mentioned in the previous video here was the story trope Hokuzono was writing was the classic hero meets villain and is challenged in his or her ideals, and Hirohiku did this with Chihiro and tried to convince him that they were kind of the same, and well, he wasn't wrong. This chapter opens up with a flashback of Samura and Chihiro talking, with Chihiro basically learning the way of the sword, and this leads into a very, very important story beat for Chihiro, with Samura reminding him that he is not a hero. He has killed a lot of people and he didn't want Chihiro looking at him all starry-eyed. A strong parallel is drawn here between Samura not wanting Chihiro to look up to him as a hero. As the current day events are playing out, we see civilians looking at Chihiro as if he is some sort of monster rather than a hero, and a stark contrast from Chihiro's goal here to protect the innocents from evildoers. And even though he is actively protecting them, they can't see Chihiro as anything else other than a monster. Hirohiku, however, revels in this idea, telling Chihiro he wants to be friends with him. Again, leaning into the fact that Hirohiku truly believes that he and Chihiro are similar parties. As we come to find out a little bit later on, he's not really wrong. The two begin to fight and Hirohiku creates a space between him and Chihiro, with Chihiro taunting him. Now, something that struck me as odd was Chihiro throughout his fights has often remained stoic, quiet, even against Sojo and Kira. There was very, very little said between the two in real time. Obviously, we had those communications between Sojo and Chihiro in that subspace, but in real time, there was very little going on. Same thing for Kiora. But now, here, Chihiro almost tries to goad Hirohiku into acting rashly and running away by asking, all you know how to do is run out of way. And the running theme in this chapter here and the past chapter is how similar both Hirohiku and Chihiro are. Much to Chihiro's detest, the similarities are there, but in a different way. Two sides to a coin, in a way. An action Hirohiku takes here is completely conceal himself in paper, as to shroud himself from Chihiro, completely shrouded in white. Now, throughout this, there's chaos. Chihiro notices that Hirohiku is using the audience members as bait, and throughout the sequence I couldn't help but think of shades of Chrollo vs Hisoka, with Chrollo using audience members as bait to try and lure Hisoka into a false sense of security or a false attack, and leaving himself open. But that is where the similarities come to a very, very swift end for this fight. All while this is happening, Chihiro is almost frozen in time, watching, waiting and analysing what he can actually do. And the parallel here is that it's actually Hirohiku who is given the thought and the monologue of Chihiro's options. Should he use Kuro? Would he use Nishiki? Could he hold his ground? Ultimately, Chihiro is doomed to die by 1,000 cuts, and a monologue cuts in. To the average person, you are a monster. In the play that was just interrupted, there is a scene where the enemy takes a hostage. The hero, Sasuke, is paralysed and the enemy gets away, but Sasuke, he's garbage. You can't worry about a hostage or two. In real life, you'd be dead. You're a killer, but at the moment of truth, you want to play the hero as if you weren't just a monster. Chihiro Rokuhira, I want this to resonate with you. You are one of us. Chihiro is stood completely and utterly frozen, allowing the attacks to just rain down on him, and just as it looks like he's about to just collapse, this flashback kicks in and we see Samura's continued conversation with Chihiro. Something I found particularly interesting is how Hokuzono sets up these in-depth conversations. They almost always seem to happen over food. There always seems to be some sort of food involved with Chihiro's deepest conversations. Ultimately, Samura ends up telling Chihiro that he has cut many people down, and he can't stand to see the sight of severed flesh, and it's partly why he blinded himself. Samura tells Chihiro that it's not something to aspire to, and that he is going to hell. Now, something I really love that Hokuzono is doing right now, he's really hammering this home, is that the actions that the sword bearers have taken in the past, they aren't as noble as they've been made out to be. They aren't really heroes. They recognize that they might have done something for the greater good, but they haven't done something good to get to that point. After all, these are veterans. They are capable of and have done some seriously heinous acts from the sounds of it. And even if it was for the greater good, they still took a blood-soaked path that allowed them to get to that time of peace. And Chihiro makes a decision. Knowing all this, recognizing all this, he makes a decision that will see him going down a much darker path to get to his goals. An action Chihiro takes here is to completely conceal himself in Kuro, as to shroud himself from Hirohiku, completely shrouded in black. Hokuzono gives us a double spread of a room shrouded in darkness, with Chihiro looking absolutely menacing, cutting off Hirohiku's arms. Again, making sure that there is no option for escape, similar to the way that John Hishaku got away. He even stabs through the emblem, which I thought was quite symbolic. Possibly caution from Chihiro here to make sure that the emblem isn't like a marker that can activate. He's disrupted that marker there and then. Now, as I mentioned before, there is parallels here in this chapter between Chihiro and Hirohiku, essentially being two sides of the coin, the same. And an action that Chihiro takes here, just like Hirohiku, is to shroud himself in the opposite of what white is, black. And the final panels end with Chihiro looking less like the hero of a story and more like the villain who will stop at nothing to accomplish his goals. And Chihiro tells Hirohiku, "Don't worry, I'm a sinner too. The first time I killed a person, I accepted that I'm a monster. The least I can do is refrain from causing others harm, and to take you Hishaku bastards to hell with me." Now, this chapter, to me personally, is quite possibly the peak of the series so far, in my personal opinion. A true 10 out of 10 chapter for the series, and I am extremely excited to see where everything goes. Hokuzono has been truly fucking cooking, and as I mentioned in the last chapter, one thing that I have with the series right now, a complaint that I have with the series, is that these villains that he introduces are fucking phenomenal, but they never seem to stick around too long, and obviously it's not looking too good for Hirohiku here, so I would very much like it if he somehow managed to survive. I would love to see the two of these compete further on down the line, considering the ideals that has been put beside them and how everything's been presented in this chapter. I would love to see them grow further and further. Anyways, that's everything from me. If you've not already, be sure to like and subscribe, and also check out my second channel. I have a channel based on comic books now. We just crossed 200 subscribers, so that's quite cool. Also, if you're filthy rich, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. It always helps me out. But that is everything from me. As always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.